for joining us this afternoon for our online forum of AI in 2021. How has COVID-19 impacted machine learning? There we go. To give you a bit of an idea of who VEF is, for those of you who don't know, the Vancouver Entrepreneurs Forum is Vancouver's premium networking forum for technology entrepreneurs. Founded in 1988, VEF has been bringing together entrepreneurs and investors alike to cultivate meaningful connections and create conversations designed to stimulate ideas. We host 8 events per calendar year, kicking off our season in September. So this is our November event and the last one of the 2020 calendar year. We're almost through 2020, everybody. My name is Amy Ray. I'm a principal at Vanedge Capital here locally, and I'm a board member of VEF, and I'll be your MC for today. VEF is pleased to be able to provide free and discounted tickets during this time of social distancing. We miss you in person, but we also want to thank the people who have generously paid to attend today's online meeting, as we are a non-for-profit. If you haven't done so already, please join and introduce yourself on our Slack channel. The link to join was sent out in an email this afternoon, and it's also in our Zoom chat right now. VEF wouldn't be possible without the contributions of our dedicated board members who put on the events and get together a few times a year, well, quite a few times a year. And I want to thank all the board members who are committed to helping advance the Vancouver technology ecosystem. We have a supportive community of sponsors, and we'd like to thank them. Thank you to our title sponsor, Innovate BC. Innovate BC connects BC tech innovators to government support and funding resources. I'd also like to take a minute to thank our sponsors and supporters who help VEF host these events: CIBC, Corporate Recruiters, Douglas College, Faskins, Wealth Bar, and Vanedge Capital. I'd also like to put a little shout out there and congratulate and recognize that Wealth Bar has been acquired by CI Financial, who recently rebranded CI Direct Investing. So congratulations to you. And I was mentioning earlier in the chat, VEF is working with New Ventures BC to deliver our online events, and that's why they work so smoothly. New Ventures BC is also part of the BC tech community, offering their annual startup competition and accelerator programs. So thank you to New Ventures for helping us out. I'd like to introduce New Ventures BC Executive Director Angie Schick to give a quick announcement. Angie?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm just here to give a very quick lightning pitch to tell you all that you may be familiar with the annual New Ventures BC competition presented by Innovate BC. You may also be wondering why I'm speaking to you, because the awards are usually handed out at the end of September. Well, 2020, as you all know, is not like any year. So our awards had to move around a couple times. So we are very pleased to say that we will be announcing the winners finally this coming Monday, November the 23rd. We're very excited to finally tell you who the winners of the competition are. And please do join us online on Zoom this Monday. And I believe we'll put the link in the chat or visit our website, newventuresbc.com. Thanks, Amy.
Great. Thank you, Angie. Another community announcement, Crossover Launchpad, December 9th and 10th. Crossover Launchpad is an exclusive pitch session for 9 of BC's most compelling AI startups to present to investors from around the world. The format is 5-minute pitch followed by 5-minute Q&A for investors, and Crossover AI will facilitate meetings afterwards to investors who express interest in speaking with particular companies. So if you have a Series A early stage AI company and you'd like to be a part of this pitch, you can contact info@ainbc.ai. Okay, on to our lightning pitches. The Vancouver VF Forum kicks off each event with a series of lightning pitches. The entrepreneurs are leading high potential early stage tech companies. Each presenter is given 100 seconds to promote their venture. I'm just going to get to my timer. And today we have 3 pitches. So first up is Stephen Forth, co-founder of Ibbaka. I think I'm going to stop sharing to give it over to Stephen.
Okay, and I think I can share my screen now.
There you go.
Oops. Okay, if I make this smaller. Okay, shall I get started, Amy?
Perfect.
So I'd like to thank Amy and all of the rest of the team for giving Ibbaka a chance to present today to the Vancouver Enterprise Forum. Ibbaka is a software platform that helps organizations uncover their strategic advantage and make sure they have the capabilities needed to deliver growth. Some common use cases are to identify strategic opportunities, develop new capabilities, and to build the cross-functional skill-based teams needed to deliver on those strategic opportunities. AI flows through our platform. We use it to gather data, extract skills and performance, and then build a connected skill and value graph from which we can infer market opportunities and suggest areas of strategic advantage, markets to target, roles to take on, and people to work with. Our growth is accelerating. We expect to do just under $2 million in revenue this year and to double that to $4 million next year. Like any AI, we need to address the ethical issues. And on the Ibbaka platform, people own their own data. They have full control over what appears on their profiles and in the analysis, and they can challenge the inferences made by the AI. If you would like to learn more, please email Karen or myself, or visit our website, ibbaka.com. Thank you.
Great. 8 seconds to spare. All right. Thank you, Stephen. Next up, we have Sophie Wyne, CEO of ariglad. Do we have Sophie with us? There we go. I see you. Can you share your screen, Sophie?
Sorry, I was having a bit of trouble unmuting there. Thank you so much. Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so yeah, thank you so much for everyone for coming here on your Tuesday afternoon to listen to us pitch. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ariglad. So the problem that we're looking to solve is that anonymous employees reporting options today aren't used by employees because they don't know that they have access to them and HR can't easily follow up. So this is really when an employee needs to reach out anonymously for a question or a concern. So the solution is that we integrate with environments like Slack. So employees can really easily send anonymous questions or concerns to HR. Employees are automatically connected to resources relating to their question, and HR is able to quickly verify and follow up on submissions. So we were founded in April of 2020, so quite recently, and we built our MVP and got our first few customers in June of 2020. We've steadily grown since, and we're really looking to achieve our seed round in Q4 of 2020. So how do we make money? So our cost per employee is $2.50. The average customer spend in ARR is $3,600. We're looking to achieve 1 million in ARR by achieving over 250 employee or organizations by the end of next year. So the product itself is we integrate with Slack so employees can reach out to HR anytime. Employees automatically get referred to resources based on their ask. So if they had a question about COVID, they would get referred to resources for COVID. Our case management system allows HR to easily assign cases to their team, pull in external help, and keep information in one place for legal purposes. And our milestones is really looking to improve the tool by bringing on our CTO full time, our demand generation specialist to help secure that 277 customers and achieve that 1 million in ARR. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. All right, thanks. And finally, we have Amir Hayeri, CEO of Bioconscious with us.
Yep. Hi, everyone.
There we go.
All right. I'm not going to share any props or anything. I'm just going to, talk over. But anyways, I'm Amir, the founder of Bioconscious Technologies. Thank you for inviting me. We were the first company that applied true machine learning to continuous glucose monitoring data in 2015. And I'm very proud to share that today, because of our technology, thousands of patients with diabetes are staying healthier for a longer period of time using our disease prevention technology that we've built. In validating our technology, the Food and Drug Administration of the US FDA, has designated our technology de novo, which is a rare exclusive designation for the technologies that the agency hasn't seen before. And we're working further with the agency and expect achieving breakthrough status for our technology in the next 60 days, simply because everything that exists currently on the market, hardware and software included, will show the patient what has happened in the past, as compared to our technology is able to predict complications way before the patient presents clinical symptoms. And the patient is then therefore able to prevent those complications ahead of time. And obviously achieving breakthrough status will do a lot about for our credibility, but also it will achieve two things. One is that our services will be reimbursed in the US if we get this type of designation. So what that means is one of the largest payers in the US, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, will pay for our services for at least 4 years with no conditions. And it will also dramatically improve the acquisition, as chances for an acquisition, as well as exclusive licensing for our technology. If you'd like to know more about our noble pursuit, please come find me. And with that said, I don't want to keep anybody. So, I'll open the floor up to questions or comments or whatever comes after.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, maybe we'll save the questions for the networking at the end, but I appreciate that all our lightning pitches had 5 to 10 seconds to spare. So it's actually very hard to get a message across in such a short amount of time. So I know there's a lot of work that goes into that. So thank you, Stephen, Sophie, and Amir. Let me go back to sharing. There we go. All right, so I'd just like to remind everybody that they can keep the conversation going. I think I saw in the chat that we had a little problem with our Slack. Has that been fixed, Michaela? Does everybody have that Slack link if they need it?
Yes.
All right, great. And now on to the show. I'd like to introduce our panel moderator, Handol Kim. Handol is co-founder and CEO of Variational AI, an AI for drug discovery startup based in Vancouver. Variational AI is applying the state-of-the-art generative AI to generate novel drug-like small molecules that are effective, safe, and synthesizable in months versus years. Prior to co-founding Variational AI, Handol was general manager of Quadrant AI, a business division of D-Wave Systems. He brings over 20 years of executive management experience from venture-backed startups, publicly listed technology companies in cloud, mobile, embedded, and telecommunication software in Silicon Valley, Canada, and Asia Pacific. Variational AI is the third startup he has co-founded. Handol is vice chair of AI networks in British Columbia and a board director of Digital Technology Supercluster and United Way in the Lower Mainland. So I'm going to pass it over now to Handol.
Thanks very much, Amy. It's a tremendous pleasure and honor to be here and moderate and introduce our panelists. And very much a round of applause and congratulations and thanks to New Ventures BC for putting on this event in tandem with VEF. So it's great for entrepreneurs who tend to be, by definition, optimistic and potentially a little bit delusional, to be able to sit around virtually with people like ourselves. And it's going to be a little difficult and a little weird because there's no immediate feedback. Normally, you'd all be rolling in the aisles because of my wonderful comic delivery and timing, but all I can see is basically windows and names of people. So I'm just going to assume that you're all laughing and having a good time. But without further ado, I'd like to, first of all, introduce our great panel. This is a wonderful panel that combines a lot of experience in different areas. First of all, we have Elliot Holtham. He's the founder of Xtract AI, and he has an exit, and he's working on new stuff. But Xtract AI was a wonderful machine learning company, which I believe Vanedge, Amy, you guys invested in, and they were acquired by Patriot One Technologies. So a warm welcome to Elliot Holtham, and he's a good friend and has a lovely singing voice. Jessica Yip is the co-founder and COO of A&K Robotics, and Jessica has been, a pivotal member of the machine learning community here in BC, and they are in autonomous vehicles, but robotics for mobility solutions, and I think Jessica will be able to do it far better justice than I just stumbled over trying to explain what they do. And then we have Mohsen Khalkahli. He's the CEO of Collisure, and this is a new venture for him as well. So we're getting some second-time AI entrepreneurs here. And he was previously co-founder and CEO of Caliber Technologies, which was involved in computer vision. And Collisure is in the space of automotive insurance and AI. And then finally, we have Rogayeh Tabrizi, who's a CEO of Theory+Practice. And we're really happy to have her here. She is a frequent traveler, but like all of us who used to travel a lot, have our frequent flyer plans languishing and kind of miss traveling a lot, but probably don't as much. But we're lucky to have her here. Theory+Practice is a completely revenue-based multi-industry algorithm development company that focuses on large Fortune 500 companies around the world. And so we have a very broad group of entrepreneurs here as we go into the panel. And what I'm hoping is that, we've been facing look, 2020 is coming to an end. All right, let's just assume that 2020 is over. And I'd like you to join me in this sort of flight of fancy in the sense that as 2020 draws to a close and we have multiple high quality vaccines that are showing remarkable efficacy against COVID-19, let's zoom into the future, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, into a world where COVID is no longer the concern it is now. And although we're seeing surges and more people will sick, and it will likely get worse before it gets better, the fact is that there is light at the end of the road. And as entrepreneurs, we will hold on to that with tremendous tenacity and optimism. And what we can safely say, though, is we don't know when things will get back to normal. But what we do know is that no textbook, no VC, no business school, no accelerator has ever taught us entrepreneurs how to get through a global pandemic. So the fact that you're still alive and the fact that you have enough bandwidth to come in and sit around and listen to this panel at VEF and network with people who are in the same situation as you all deserve a big round of applause. And so let's take a deep breath and kind of think about, all right, yeah, you made payroll, you got your queues, you got all of this stuff. You're thinking now, what happens in the future? And despite the fact that COVID has been bad, it's been really, really bad. Was it uniformly bad? I mean, certainly we've lost so many lives. The socioeconomic and geopolitical impact has been unprecedented. These disruptions are unfathomable, but we're very practical as startup entrepreneurs. We're small, we're nimble, and we move quickly. And I'd like to think that, the conditions that killed off the dinosaurs, that comet that came in and killed these lumbering behemoths that had ruled the planet for 100 million years, well, that allowed the smaller, nimbler, smarter little mammals to ascend and become the dominant species on Earth. And so to stretch that metaphor, as startup entrepreneurs here, and specifically in the field of AI, I'm hoping that we can think about, as COVID comes to an end, we want this panel to be focused on positivity, on optimism, and on opportunities. So we're going to assume in a post-COVID world, we'll be speaking with a bunch of AI and machine learning entrepreneurs working in different industries, and we want to hear how they plan to not just survive, but thrive and grow in 2021 and beyond. And we'll be discussing the magnitude and breadth of the impact of COVID-19 on commercial applications in AI and machine learning. Also discussing what trends, opportunities, and changes our panelists believe are temporary and contingent on COVID-19 and which will persist post-COVID-19, e.g. what is the new normal going forward? And then what dynamics will hinder or accelerate adoption of machine learning in their respective industries? So we're really, really grateful to have this opportunity. So before we begin, I know it's customary in VEF to kind of have these rapid fire questions. And so I'd like to ask our panelists, starting with Jessica, did COVID change your plan for 2020? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that would be amazing if you said no. Mohsen.
No.
Well, you're lucky, aren't you? Considering it's a new company for you, so that hasn't changed. Rogayeh, impact on business in 2020? Hello.
Hi. Now, yes. Yes and a no.
Okay. Yes or no? Oh, you that's great. And Elliot, how about you?
No.
No change. Yeah. Well, that's specific to you guys. So then here's another question: is has COVID accelerated or decelerated your product development or customer traction? So Elliot.
Definitely decelerated.
Decelerated.
For sure.
Okay. And how about you, Rogayeh?
Accelerated.
Accelerated. Mohsen?
Decelerated.
I'm sorry?
Decelerated.
Decelerated. Okay.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks to be in automotive right now. So, Jessica, how about you?
It decelerated and then it accelerated.
Okay, so a little curve. That's great. And then, as an entrepreneur and as a CEO or as an operational executive, are there any changes in your company brought about by COVID that you plan to continue post-COVID, like work from home or various other things? Jessica.
Yes, and I think that would be our remote customer demos and trials.
Great. How about you, Rogayeh?
Traveling less, but other than that, not really in terms of overall company.
Okay, Mohsen?
Yeah, attending meetings and events virtually.
And Elliot?
Work towards remote working in the longer run with some sort of hybrid, meetings in person, of course.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, here's an operational question. We can kind of address this later on, but it seems like the fact that we don't actually have to fly to and meet face to face is a game changer for smaller companies. I mean, and it's an accelerant in that sense. And I hope that companies and especially enterprises and customers continue to use to be open to that. And then final question is has anyone closed any funding during COVID? Jessica, have you gotten any funding or investment?
No, not during COVID.
No. How about you, Rogayeh?
We haven't gone for funding, but we have closed multiple clients during COVID. Multiple.
Right. That's great. Mohsen?
No, we haven't been raising any funds.
How about you, Elliot?
No, not during COVID.
But did you get your exit during COVID or was it before?
It was before COVID, actually. So
yeah,
it was in the fall and then COVID kind of hit in the spring. So I was definitely happy that sort of things were wrapped up before the uncertainty came in the market and everything like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely easier to do it before COVID and this is a question that we can also ask for attendees as well. Is if anyone is going out for funding or what they've seen. I mean, Amy, as a VC at Vanedge, I mean, have you've invested during COVID?
Yep, we have, and we're in due diligence and in data rooms, and we have a fund, and we still have to deploy that capital, and we have a focus that doesn't go away. And I totally agree. A lot of what I've seen is deceleration into acceleration because of COVID. So very interesting times.
Oh, okay, great. Well, so maybe we can go to our panelists, and if Jessica, why don't you start? If you could give us a background about A&K Robotics and yourself.
for sure. Thanks, Handol. So I'm the founding COO of A&K Robotics. We're a self-driving technology company, and we use AI and different sensors to make robots that automate the movement of people and services. That includes cleaning. And so for us, fortunately, we have seen an uptick in interest across our product line. Personally, for myself, my background is in operations. I was working in real estate prior to coming into tech. And at A&K, I'm really closely involved in our customer development and business strategy. And presently, what I'm seeing in our segments is that our customers are really, at this moment, looking into AI and robotics to automate their operations for the long term. I'm thinking beyond COVID. And so, in terms of like what I've been seeing, you know, in the type of change, I think that we have experienced, you know, I could never predict that we'd be in this situation when it was January 2020. It certainly looked very different back then, but I'm very fortunate that, you know, it didn't turn us upside down. So there was an adjustment period for ourselves shifting into remote work, and you know the day-to-day is different, and I think that's the case for many businesses, and it's forced a lot of companies, I think, to work smarter. So from our side, in robotics, I think industries, I think, have been contemplating the potential of AI and robotics for some time. But I think COVID might actually be the event that really accelerates the adoption of AI and robotics in a shorter time frame.
And who are your customers, Jessica?
Yeah, so we sell our robots to airports, to universities, and their larger scale buildings and facilities like malls and campuses. So actually automation is not new to them and to any of our customers, but a lot of the 10-year master plans and strategies that they have developed prior to COVID are now in flux. And a lot of them are looking for new ways of doing business. And so I think AI in their internal discussions is going up in priority, especially for airports. And they're recognizing now the importance of data and AI more urgently. And I think it's specifically realizing that they need to really capture the operational data internally now more than ever as a way to bring more certainty back into how they operate. So I see from our perspective, a lot of our customers and in general in industries, they are looking to tech companies, they are looking to startups to help get them there. So that does present a lot of opportunity, but at the very same time, I'm seeing that just beyond building technology, with the amount of uncertainty that does exist, I think the implementation is really paramount to the customer. So they need the comfort, I think, of a really clear rollout plan in order to take a new technology. And I think that's really key to the adoption of AI right now.
Cool. Thank you very much. Mohsen, why don't you tell us a bit about Collisure?
Sure. Great to be here. I've been involved in the Vancouver ecosystem since 2015. First on as investor, I was living in London at the time, and I was kind of traveling to Vancouver to kind of invest in entrepreneurs here in this ecosystem. And it's good to be on the entrepreneurial side today in Vancouver. So today I'm the co-founder and CEO of Collisure. We are a startup dedicated to simplifying road safety. Automated driving technology such as Tesla Autopilot is really making vehicles safer, but insurance companies are really lagging behind in terms of reflecting these safety changes in the insurance pricing. And the current automated driving industry groups automation into 6 different levels, starting from 0 up to 6, up to 5. And level 2 is what most cars have today, most new cars have today. And most of these level 2 systems use cameras to work. And what we do, we use the camera data from the video data from the cameras to assess the driving behavior and come up with a score that will enable insurance companies to have better pricing and use it in their pricing algorithm. And right now we are still very early stage. We started in kind of depth of COVID in April 2020. We kind of knew that kind of our timeline was going to be at least 2020 would be mostly spent on research and kind of initial product development. And that's probably why kind of our plans haven't really changed. But we know that next year for us is going to be the go-to-market kind of time, and that's going to be very important for us.
Thanks very much, Mohsen. Rogayeh?
Sure. Thanks, Handol. So Theory+Practice is a data science services company. We partner with our clients to build them, end-to-end roadmap of when it comes to their AI strategy and actually executing on that strategy. I actually resonate with a lot of things Jessica was talking about. Most of the conversations with our clients, which are mostly enterprises, Fortune 10 and Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, is they all have ideas and plans AI. There's a lot of hype around AI, around bringing predictive and advanced analytics into their organizations. But there is a really big gap within the how-to of it. There is a lot of, I call it wasteland of POCs when it comes to AI, and POC after POC inside these organizations, millions and millions of dollars, and there's no way to actually bring it to scale. So that's really the space that we work in. We work extremely agile and within a lot of flexible frameworks that we have developed to get to trial and error very quickly and just scale up from there. So we are about 3 years old right now, and the kind of work that we do sits really at the edge of AI and ML, but also a dash of behavioral economics and game theory. I think one of the things that is really big for us, and in building the company, I kind of went out of my way to find people with a lot of diversity in their backgrounds. So it's really not about just having a bunch of physicists and computer scientists go at problems. It's really about asking the questions first and convincing ourselves that we have understood the assumptions behind the problems that we are going after to solve. So, in my team, economists sits with computer scientists, sits with architects, sits with physicists, and it's really about looking at problem from a lot of different angles. In terms of our plans, you asked, and I said, we have accelerated it mostly because of the same topics and areas that Jessica was touching on. COVID has definitely, put it this way, a lot of people that previously were paying lip service to digital transformation and AI and bringing advanced analytics. Now it's just like, well, guess what? You don't really have an option because everything's just going really digital and AI, or I guess online. So being able to have a system and infrastructure that actually works well and doesn't break is really important. So I guess I'll leave it at that, and we can get into it more with questions.
And where are most of your customers, or which industry sectors? I know they're large, they're enterprise customers, but.
Yeah, so right now we're mostly working in finance, retail, and insurance. Those are the 3 verticals.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rogayeh. All right, last but not least, Elliot. Elliot, would love to hear about Xtract and also some other stuff that you're working on, if that so pleases you, sir.
Yeah, for sure. So Xtract sort of plays 2 roles now post-acquisition. First of all, we're sort of delivering all the data analytics and AI for the parent company, Patriot Technologies. So for those of you not familiar with Patriot, Patriot's in the public safety and threat detection space. So their first product, the PatScan platform, was basically all about concealed weapons detections. So I'm sure you've seen in the news like mass shootings in schools, Vegas, all these types of things. They're pretty tragic and hopefully preventable. So what they're basically doing is building a covert system that people can't see, and that can be installed in locations and basically detect weapons before there's a tragic event like a school shooting. And it's something that really resonates with me now. I have 2 young kids at home, and the idea of them going to school one day and having to deal with crazy people shooting them up is it's really scary. So that's sort of the one angle there. Xtract sort of delivering the analytics and also helping on the hardware development for next generation systems. And then we're also sort of keeping the existing customers. So Xtract had built sort of 2 main pieces of technology on their AI platform, one around computer vision. So things like, we have a lot of projects with the Department of Defense around sort of object detection, analytics around video and surveillance data. And then the other one around sort of document review. So an example would be, a customer is the public health agency. So analyzing PubMed articles in near real time. So instead of people looking through, millions and millions of articles to answer questions that was taking them literally a year to do a review, the AI can basically analyze them almost in real time and basically come up with similar accuracy as a human was doing there. So sort of maintaining the customers there in both sort of the text analytics side and the computer vision side of things.
Great. Thanks very much, Elliot. So, it's great. We have a diversity in terms of businesses, what sort of target customers are, whether it's real estate, facilities, shopping centers, physical plant. We have finance, insurance and retail. We have automotive, and we have sort of security and various other industries. And I guess the main thing is as entrepreneurs, and it sounds like, pretty much we're in the phase where we're trying to get either revenue generating customers in a proper go-to-market, sort of sales motion, or we're also trying to get early stage validation customers, whether they be in POCs or whether they be in various projects in order to validate the technology. But I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, and just to put a kind of number on it, in your opinion, what was the magnitude of the impact of COVID-19 on your business? And to be specific, in terms of your ability to get customers or partners on a sales or business development side. So I'll start with Jessica. What? And you can go minus too. If it was really bad, you can say minus 10.
The interest on our side with the products that we sell, it didn't really go down. It was just in the initial period when everybody was adjusting, it slowed. I'd say at the moment we do continue to get interest and demand for our products, whether it's the cleaning robot, whether it's the autonomous people mover. I'd say the challenge would be that relates specifically to COVID, is that our international deployments, our ability to capture those would be slowed a bit. So locally, domestically, there aren't as many travel restrictions, but internationally, it's a different story. So I think what I'm foreseeing in terms of international deployments, if we want to capture those ourselves, we need to refine our installation cycle and probably refine our product a bit so that it works more out of the box.
Mm-hmm. So it was a fairly significant impact. Slowing.
In terms of being able to deliver on international sales, that has had an impact. But at the same side, we did get more interest locally. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of it's hard to say. Yeah. We do still see interest, but we're focusing right now where we can deliver more easily, and that's in our own backyard, locally in BC, and then across Canada. And I think we'll probably focus on that a little bit more, and then continue to ease and adjust while we wait for that vaccine. We see how travel restrictions decrease.
Yeah, so there's a common sort of complaint by Canadian entrepreneurs, which is that Canadian customers are usually not your first customers. It's funny that as a Canadian tech entrepreneur, your first customers are usually American or international. They're rarely the ones in your own backyard. And you give me a couple of beers and I'll go on for hours about why that is and why it's so stupid. But the fact of the matter is do you see now perhaps a bit more openness on the part of local or Canadian customers to Canadian startups and their products?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's for many reasons. We have customers that are coming into our pipeline that we talked to before, and they kind of, robots are not necessarily as advertised, right? And so even if before they had a bit of skepticism, now they are a lot more interested in adopting it, which is really good for us. And so I think on that, it is, we're fortunate. It's a bit more on the upside for us to be able to do that. In terms of the international customers that you bring up, though, in Vancouver, I think also maybe it's the type of product that we've developed, maybe it's a particular challenge that we're trying to solve. We have been fairly fortunate to get interest locally and internationally, and there are a lot of, as far as our customers go, a lot of multinationals that are based here. And so hopefully if we can create and deliver and deploy a robot in their sites here, it's something that we can scale in their operations globally.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rogayeh, so what was the impact sort of like if you could quantify sort of the magnitude and the breadth of the impact of COVID-19 on your business, and specifically in terms of how it impacted your sales motion and your ability to generate revenue and projects?
So during COVID, we doubled, both in terms of our revenue and also in terms of the size of the team. That was already in plans. We were projecting that we would double and actually more than double this year, even in the first half of the year. So that did happen and we didn't get quite impacted by it. We were working in retail. I remember working actually with a Canadian/American retailer, really like both brick and mortar as well as online. And we got started on that project middle of February. And I remember thinking, okay, this is how a project gets canceled. And, but our project didn't get canceled. And I think one of the reasons for it was just kind of goes back to the things that I was talking before in terms of our focus. It's really about the value. Like we have to convince ourselves, let alone our customers, that the work that we do is actually going to generate money for them. And in this particular case, we were working on saving them money. So the use case was a return use case. We were predicting whether you can actually predict who is going to return what item before they even purchased it. And the short answer is yes, you can. And we saved them about $6 million in the first quarter. So, when it comes to those sort of projects, we've had success, but retailers, as we know, definitely been hit extremely hard. That said, we also signed another massive retailer, Fortune 10, during COVID, just because of the acceleration in their digital and e-commerce. So, the same with what Jessica is talking about definitely was a mix. The kind of focus that we had, the kind of retailers that we were going after, it was hard, but then people that we didn't expect that we would actually be able to sign, we end up signing them that much more quickly. Finance, there was definitely an acceleration in finance. And there were a lot of people that were just, people know, and they knew that before, but now it's just really in their face that the way customers are going to interact with them is going to be digital. So that infrastructure really needs to be in place. So I would say we were impacted positively. However, some of the contracts and work that we have been going after is really bigger, as in before it was really like proving to people this works. And now they're like, no, we really need this. So we have to actually put together a bigger roadmap and bigger plans. So in that sense, it's been a slower, just simply because we're working on a bigger project.
Well, I mean, that's a great champagne problem. So congratulations on that. I mean, if I'm hearing what you're saying, this whole sort of COVID has been sort of this forcing function to accelerate digitalization. And as practitioners of machine learning, we all know that the more and better data you have, the better the training and the better the results. And so, we often found in engagements when, back in my previous role, that clients wouldn't have the data, or they were hold on to that data and not give it to you, or, there was all of this concern. But now that, the bricks and mortar world has been hit tremendously and you have no choice but to embrace digitalization, do you think that this is a wave that will continue after COVID-19?
The short answer is yes, but the how-to of it is actually really important because, at the same time that we are seeing acceleration in digital, there's all the conversation about ethics and AI, who owns data, privacy, cybersecurity, and it just goes on and on. So access to data and the kind of measures around that is going to become even that much stronger. So, and that's why I say the how-to matters. I come across this question that you ask all the time. The first question actually usually is, we don't think we have enough data. I'm like, well, are you sure? How did you make that decision? And the odds are they actually have more data that they need, but it's about the right question, the feasible questions, and questions that can actually move the dial for them and impact top line or bottom line. And before spending like millions of dollars, because budgets definitely have been scrutinized. So these are some of the challenges that they're facing. We work with minimum viable data. As a matter of fact, I'm like, don't give me all of your data. What am I going to do with that? And we are actually going to work inside your environment, by the way, because, as a startup, I do not want to bear the risk of getting data out of your environment. So it has to be the case that the infrastructure is actually ready. And oftentimes we do an audit of that. Are you actually use case ready? And the kind of use cases, how do you prioritize around it? So being able to help organizations think a little bit more systematically and strategically about their approach to AI is actually that much more important now than before.
Great, thank you. So Mohsen, in the automotive and road safety space, how do you see, and you said that there was a deceleration in the business, which of course is understandable and completely, but maybe you could talk about the impact to your business, and also maybe you could talk about what trends you think will persist after the end of COVID.
Yeah, sure. And I think going back to your kind of scale of 1 to 10 or -10 to +10. I think the impact on our business directly has been probably -2 or -1 because we're not we haven't launched a product yet. We're still in private beta. And the impact there has been kind of the work from home, which for an early stage startup, it's really, it makes kind of brainstorming and the initial kind of discussions very difficult compared to in person and in the office, I think. On our underlying market, which is car insurance, I'd say the impact has been probably -10, and it's been insurance and car insurance industry has been one of the worst hit with with the people not driving as much as before. And in the US, in March and April, all the big insurance companies, they started offering refunds on the premiums that they had already collected from the customers. State Farm, for example, they returned $2 billion of premiums collected to customers for the March to May period. And I think, but the upside that we see from here going forward is that there was an EY report published last week that 31% of people who don't currently have a car, they are planning to buy a car in the next 6 months. And the kind of that is taking market share for the shorter trips or kind of urban trips from public transport and kind of taxis and ride hailing. And for the longer or medium kind of trips, it's taking market share from airlines. And a lot of people will definitely find it cheaper and more convenient and COVID friendly, if that's something kind of to think about, to use their own car and just travel. And so that's something that we see kind of a positive trend that we see going forward.
Thanks very much, Mohsen. Elliot, your take on this. What was the scale of the impact of COVID-19 on your business in terms of the acquisition of customers or partnerships?
Yeah, for sure it was negative. I mean, if you look at the security space in a lot of the places that the Patriot PassScan platform is installed, it's places like stadiums, large retail sites, concert halls, basically everything that got shut down. So for sure, it's not an ideal time from that perspective. I mean, I think we all, I think a lot of the vaccine and things that are coming along are quite positive from that thing, but for sure, it's not ideal in terms of customer acquisition. When your stadium's shut down, the last thing that a company wants to do is be spending money on something that doesn't bring them $1 revenue, right? Everyone loves spending money on things that give top line, and people don't love spending things that are costs, obviously, right? So I think that was definitely less than ideal. I mean, there was opportunities to basically repurpose pieces of technology. For example, the VRS platform, which is a visual recognition for objects, for things like that. It was repurposed for things like mask detection or thermal anomaly detections for entering buildings, for example, right? And there's a supercluster project involving on things like that. And then some of the other, computer vision things were able to be repurposed to new projects like Xtract was working with Amazon and VGH and UBC on 3D CT scan image segmentation for COVID, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's, definitely the core market was disrupted quite a bit, but there's obviously ways to take some of the technology and find new opportunities with these types of things, right?
Right. And this is a great story. And especially in this audience where we're all entrepreneurs, we understand we're just, one event away from a pivot, whether it's beyond our control or whether it's something that we cause ourselves. But, I mean, Instagram started off as, a location thing, and Twitter, all of these So when you talk about the agility of the company, in facing what sounds to be a fairly existential crisis, Elliot, to be honest, right? It's how does that impact sort of the company and the team, and how do you kind of roll with it in a way that's the most productive way? Like, how did you deal with that?
Well, I think I'm not really involved so much on the day-to-day operations of Xtract anymore. I'm more of a technology advisor. Mm-hmm. But I mean, all the existing contracts that Xtract had were still ongoing and still continue to be ongoing. So there was no real disruption there. I think it's just when, as an entrepreneur, when you're faced with a new scenario, it's like, well, what are the opportunities, right? Instead of thinking about like, oh, what's not happening? Like, maybe we have to pause something for a few months, right? Because an RFP or a customer is taking a little bit longer to get back. Instead of being negative about it, saying, where's the new opportunities, right? And the new opportunities are things like, okay, well, obviously people want to do things like thermal, temperature detection, things like this, right? So where can you take the tools that you've built and the technology that you have and apply them to new business opportunities? I think, it's the glass half full versus half empty, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's a great example. Mohsen, I'll go back to you. So, people aren't driving. What do you do?
Yeah, I think I mean the kind of the larger macro trend is that driving and vehicle miles traveled, which is the main kind of metric in the transportation industry, that is increasing. This year, 2020, in the first 9 months, we've had the lowest number of vehicle miles driven since 2000. But September has been kind of year on year, has only seen a very kind of modest reduction in the total miles and total kilometers driven. So I guess the macro trend is that more people are driving and more people are actually buying their own cars. And what we need to pay attention to is the kind of manual versus automated drive and how that is going to change the kind of the industry going forward. And our focus is not much kind of the manual and the traditional kind of vehicles and how they are kind of going to perform in the future, but it's the automated driving and level 2 and anything up to level 5, which is the kind of the robo taxi, if you like. And for us, that is a positive trend. And most of the companies that are selling vehicles with these features, they're showing kind of positive sales numbers and growth in their sales numbers. And for us, the kind of enabling insurance companies to really understand how these vehicles are being used and how they're actually impacting road safety, that is, I think, kind of a secular trend that we're focusing on.
No, that's great. So then also to follow through on things that have happened that are bad for your business, as you thought about it before COVID, Jessica. So people are not going to malls, they're not going into the office, and of course, you touched on that a bit. But again, because we're all entrepreneurs, we all love to hear the story of the struggle because we all face it on a day-to-day basis. And then we like to hear about the darkness and then how we overcome the darkness. But maybe there's a story that you can share about a lesson learned or something that you think your company was able to address due to COVID.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of glass half full type of person. It was obviously when it was in February and March, it was a lot of change, a lot of people shifting to work remotely. And for our side, it's a challenge. We make robots. So it's not, and our robots are actually quite large. They're 600 pounds. They're 6 feet by 2 feet. You can't just carry that home and start working from home. So we had to really learn as we go. And really do what we could given what we knew at that moment. And sometimes that's all you can do. And I think one of the keys is that you got to be, as an entrepreneur and as a founder at this time, I'd say the biggest key is you got to be empathetic. And I mean that kind of more so than ever, because if you look at it, we're going into 9 months of COVID. There's a lot of social fatigue that can happen internally. That also happens with your customers. They're also going through a lot of change, and you got to navigate out of here. And with the amount of uncertainty that's out there, I think the key is to be empathetic and listen and take things as you go. So what we did when things slowed down at A&K, we took that time to really take care of a lot of R&D that we knew if we were going to come out strong at COVID, and we're developing products that automate cleaning, automate the movement of people, there will be a demand for this. And instead of maybe, crying or being sad about it and being uncertain, we took that time to really improve our production, cut that cost down, cut the times down. We did also experience a lot of supply chain issues. And we noticed that at the end of 2019, because we source, like a lot of robotics companies, you source things internationally. And when we noticed that was happening, we also foresaw that for ourselves to grow in the future, you may not be able to rely on the vendors that you thought you could. And so we took a lot of the past few months to really improve the production of our system so that when we are coming out of COVID, or as we continue to go forward, we can deliver.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's great. These are wonderful sort of examples and instances of how people within our community are dealing with this. I won't ask the same question, Rogayeh, because we're all very jealous of the fact that you were able to double. And so congratulations, but also at the same time, but That said, let me transition to the next question, which is a bit more of the optimistic sort of view. So let's close our eyes and, get into that hot tub time machine. And then we wake up and it's 2021, 2022, and life is kind of back to normal. What dynamics brought about by COVID-19 do you think are going to persist after COVID-19? And how do you plan to take advantage of that? And Rogayeh, why don't you kick off?
Sure, I love that question. I think both Elliot and Mohsen are talking about like the macro trends that they're seeing. I actually wanted to say something to that because I totally agree with Mohsen. The number of people that are just, even when you drive here in BC, or I actually was recently in the States. It was my first trip during COVID, and everybody is in their cars, and everybody's a single person driving. So yes, that macro trend is already happening. But back to the opportunity and back to what we are seeing in digital transformation, here to stay. People are moving that much more toward AI, that much more toward machine learning, advanced analytics. The place of real opportunity for me, and I think it just like things that a lot of at least senior executives that I talk with are seeing, is that they cannot afford to just treat data and analytics as insights. That it's just like that feedback loop needs to be so ingrained within their organization, and it really needs to inform a lot of ways that they actually make decisions. Put it this way: you wanted to take risks, you better have a really good analytics system in place, and you better take it seriously, right? It's the way to ask questions and answer questions. So there are quite a few things that I think people have learned. One of the organizations that we worked with, and this is actually interesting. If you asked me the previous question, I would have told you this story of how we are just like going down a path and we're working on a project, and they're like, wait, we have to halt that, we have to stop that, and here's like a number of our e-commerce customers are doubling, number of our whatever KPIs that they care about is just dramatically decreasing. What should we do about that? Right? So, and these are some of the signals that they were getting. There is another trend that I see, and I think organizations that manage to get a handle on it are really going to succeed. And that's being able to understand they have to pivot extremely quickly. The data and the algorithms and methods that was built before based on data from pre-COVID, simply just not going to work. It is already not working, and a lot of organizations see that. So how you think about agility, again, that's another very abused word. If you will, everybody wants to be agile, but the how-to of it, it's going to be even that much more interesting.
Oh, great. Elliot, what do you think?
Can you just repeat that again?
What trends, what impact from COVID-19 do you think is going to persist post-COVID? And how will it affect your business?
I think it depends a little bit about how long sort of this crisis lasts for. And I think, there's lots of optimism in terms of like, a vaccine, and, you see Operation Warp Speed saying they're going to get shots in the arm within 24 hours. So
right. Let's just assume that at a certain undefined period in time, it's going to be okay. What opportunities do you focus on and post-COVID, and what changes are going to persist after?
I think the biggest, people are more comfortable with not the face-to-face, communication. And I think from a lot of AI applications, that was the impediment. It wasn't necessarily the technology aspect. I think for a lot of things, like the technologies there or can be there near soon. Just as humans, we're used to talking to our accountant, talking to our lawyer, talking to our doctor, and the trust. I think the element was like people trust the human, and they weren't ready to necessarily trust the virtual aspect or the computer aspect. And I think one thing that's really changed this is that people are much more comfortable not having that human interaction now. And I think that will increase the adoption just because of the comfort level, not because the technology is any better, but because we're having this conversation right now, not in front of each other. Whereas 6 months ago, everyone would be like, oh, you can't do that, right?
Yeah. Well, so this is really good. It touches on what Rogayeh brought up. I mean, change management so it's not about the technology, it's not about the data, it's about the ability of an organization, which ultimately the human in the loop, right? Oh, damn you humans, always the barrier for true AI. But it's the ability of humans in the organization to take that change and then internalize it and then roll with it. So what you say is actually really, I think it's a great observation, Elliot. What about you, Mohsen? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the most positive trend that I see kind of persisting after COVID is kind of I think about the work from home. Most of the time is in work in your pajamas. So that's maybe not what kind of the most positive aspects of work from home, but really being able to attend events and close deals virtually, I think that is probably the biggest positive change that will persist after COVID. And it's exactly, I think, what Elliot was saying. It helped everyone overcome the inertia. The technology was ready, people were ready, and deep down, most people just knew that business travel is not that essential. And most of the time, it's just about kind of the politics of business, that you had to be there, you had to meet someone in person. But I think right now that inertia kind of is overcome, and most people are comfortable closing deals virtually and attending events. And for us, I mean, I attended an event, 2 events, one in Middle East and another in San Francisco, in space of 2 days. And I mean, in real life, I had to kind of clone myself to do that.
So, and this is a really important point, is in terms of inclusivity and the ability for a new company to maybe not part of the old boys club, being able to go in and get a face-to-face with a decision maker. But do you feel that virtually the bar is lower, or it's easier for you to get in front of that target customer that it may have been harder for you before due to travel, due to lack of, a personal connection or network or what have you? Jessica, do you have any opinion on that?
I think that, I do agree that's probably going to go into that direction. And I think that would just make that warm introduction so much more vital. To cold call, yeah, it's part of business, but I think that going down that route, to be able to get somebody to introduce you as a company will go a really long ways doing business, post-COVID, where everything's virtual.
But do you think it's easier to get on, it's easier for you to get on a Zoom call with a potential customer than, setting up that face-to-face meeting?
I think it can be. I think that can make it a lot easier, especially as a small startup. A lot of our customers are international, and we did used to travel to meet them. It'd be fun, of course, but the costs can really add up. So to be able to do that, yes, I think it's good. I think it could really reduce the cost. I think it might make reaching out cold a bit more difficult, and when you can't build that rapport face to face. That's just a bit of my own opinion, though, the way I talk and do business.
Sure. But I mean, as an old, salesperson, I'm all about the, ABC or coffees for closers or what have you. But at the same time, there's a lot of, privilege, and there's a lot of, inherent sort of friction built into that system that privileges certain people and excludes others. And I'm not saying it's intentional, but that's just the institutionalization of power. What do you think, Elliot? Do you think that this flattens it a bit? Is it easier to kind of get to people that you don't know virtually?
I think the travel element is easier. I don't think that anytime soon we're going to get rid of that face-to-face, aspect. I think people just want it. And I think history, like we've seen, 10 years from now, I could be totally wrong, but I think life will be back somewhat to normal. I think areas like banks, for example, right? I think they've been just dying to close retail locations, and they'll use this to cut their costs. Like, don't get me wrong, I think there'll be a lot of change because of this. Like, if people were looking to do some sort of digital transformation or some restructuring, this will be the time to do it. And they'll use this as that reason. But I think, like, I was on calls today and people were like, oh, can we still meet in face to face, right? Like, I just feel like when this is done, we're not gonna forget about it, but I'm optimistic that life will not that life was better before, like, I just think that the human element is still going to be important, and I think it will still persist.
Okay, great. Well, so and thank you very much, and I'll push the question on to Amy as the venture capitalist. You've said you've done deals virtually. Do you think that from a deal perspective as a VC, do you see some persistent changes that will stick around after COVID goes away and we all forget about it?
Yeah, I mean, devil's all in the details. So the one deal we did, we knew one of the investors who was in that deal very well. So that gave us more confidence of not being able to meet the team personally. And, it's interesting. I was just having this conversation last night. Our job is to deploy money, and board meetings are really important to us, and meeting people face to face are really important to us. So I find it very hard to say that my job won't go back to the way it was. I do think, though, a lot of our portfolio companies are beating their plan of record from the beginning of the year because they're seeing some accelerations, and their teams are 100% happy working from home. They're all set up, security is set up, they're just happier. And if you're meeting and exceeding your plan of record and you're happy at home, I think some of those founders are not going to send their workers back to work.
Yep, and let's be honest, working in machine learning and AI, most of the people that work
totally
they're perfectly ecstatic.
And I think the balance that, a lot of founders are like, I can have so many more calls and meetings, and I'm not stuck on planes, and I can have better customer calls. And, there's a lot of stuff that will come from this that will be positive. I just unfortunately don't think my job will see that. But yeah, I think there definitely will be change in the majority of places.
Right.
Can I jump in with one last comment about this? Because I actually really...
Sure. Oh, sorry, one second. So there are questions, we're opening questions, Q&A from the audience, so please type them in. Sorry, Rogayeh, go ahead.
No, not at all. Thank you for that. I really resonate actually with what Jessica is talking about, and the way we have done business development. And a lot of people ask me, right, like being such a young company, how did you guys in whatever company? And you'd be surprised, the majority of these were actually cold calls through LinkedIn, but extremely targeted. So we started doing that almost 2 years ago, and we were very successful because I knew exactly who I want to talk with. We had very targeted messaging for that. But now that a space is getting so crowded, we still have success in terms of getting to our target audience. But like when I get on a phone with them, they're like, I just like took this call because it felt like you guys are different. But I get so many of these every day, and that's a very common sentiment that I'm getting. So I actually think in terms of reaching to potential clients and customer, it is going to get more difficult for startups, although it looks like that the barrier to entry is easier because it's just online and you get on a phone call, etc. But I actually think it's going to make it more difficult for smaller companies that don't necessarily have the red books or black books in the networks already set up and established.
So one question is maybe a quick show of hands amongst the panelists. Who here has remote workers, or people who previously didn't work in your office in a different location before COVID? Right. And Mohsen, you guys, back at your old shop, you had people in California in addition to Vancouver, right?
Yeah, and I think that was a seed fund, that was a VC kind of type of work. And similar to what Amy is saying, that is still kind of a people business. And you need to kind of sit with people and just kind of see, get a lot of the feeling. But in startup and in kind of brainstorming and early stage product development, I think a lot of that needs to happen it can happen remotely as well.
So and to that, and here's a question about hiring. So, as you build your team, we used to kind of have this bias, rightfully so, in my opinion, generally, that you want to hire people to work in the same place as your other people, to create a concept of teamwork. And, our company has, we're in the midst of hiring software developers in machine learning. If you have a master's or PhD in generative modeling, please contact me. Anyway, sorry, variational AI. But the fact of the matter is we took a very intentional approach to say that it doesn't matter where you are. And that because of the fact that we're all in Vancouver, but we don't meet each other anyway, except like this, then it really doesn't matter where you are. And we always hold out that it may change later on, but it's really opened up sort of the world to us. And I'm just curious, what your opinions about this are, whether or not you think that this is actually a good thing, or whether you think that it won't last. Go ahead, Rogayeh.
From the very beginning, our team was distributed, and it happened not necessarily, like it was a little bit by design. It wasn't that I wanted to hire people that are not in the same location, but I went after hiring the best people that I could find. And we hired out of LSE, so we had people in London, we had people in Spain, we had people people in Toronto, New York, Florida, San Francisco, and Vancouver. And I guess like, this is how it works. So let's figure it out. So a lot of processes that we built was around the people, because it was about the people. It was about finding the right people and then building the systems and ecosystems that actually work and facilitate working remotely. So in that sense, COVID really didn't impact us at all, because that was just our thing. But hiring, still to this day, half of my team, I haven't met them in person. I'm not happy about it. I would love to meet them in person, but it hasn't stopped us from being a very effective team.
No, and that's a really, really awesome point. I mean, I've met everyone on my team, but sometimes I wish I'd never met them. So I'm sure they say that about me. In fact, they do to my face. Jessica, how about you?
For us, as a robotics company, robotics by nature is multidisciplinary, and part of our culture and our strength, I think, is in our diversity. I firmly believe that when you have more perspectives on a problem, you will be able to come out with a better solution, and that just means better innovation, and it's a competitive edge. And so for us, we did shift to remote work earlier this year, but we did gradually transition folks back. So we just take a lot more time and care into enforcing things like social distancing, making sure everybody has PPE. We stagger our staff schedules. We have to plan things a bit more further out in advance, because for us, remote working, it's doable, it's possible. We still have some folks on software that are purely remote, but for us, it is important that the team does work together. Again, our robots, they're pretty large, and we have to develop them and fix them, test them right there. So most of our team is still in Vancouver.
Sure. How about you, Elliot?
I'm sort of torn. I think that there's no doubt that there's a lot of efficiencies by sort of staying remote, and you can hire, talent that you wouldn't otherwise have. I mean, if you just look at this panel alone, I would have had to drive downtown. I probably saved 2 hours today just because I didn't have to come in and come to the panel, right? It's very efficient, and you multiply that by 100 people on the call today, and that's a lot of time. That's a lot of efficiency. On the other hand, maybe call me old-fashioned, but I think that there's nothing like getting a bunch of people in a boardroom and hashing out a problem or brainstorming. I just think that when you look at people in the eye, I don't know, I think there's something about, you get a better sense of them, and you're also in some ways quite creative when you're, throwing ideas together in one sort of common environment. And I think maybe it's like an evolutionary thing. Maybe we'll learn to get over that. I just feel that that human element of being face to face, we're almost there with the screen, and maybe we'll get used to it. But I just feel that there's that camaraderie and teamwork that, there's definitely going to be an element of that I think will sort of, stay with that face to face. I think also, if you think about a big corporation, I think a lot of it, if you're an ambitious young person and you want to move up the company, right? There's a lot of strategy and politics too. And I think that it's not just on your technical merit, it's kind of how you play that. And I think that in some ways, if you want to stay remote, that might put you at potentially a disadvantage of people that would want to return to the office, particularly in sort of the large, multinational corporations. Because I think that if you're getting more face time with your bosses, that might help. That might help you move up the ranks.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, and that's a very valid statement. I mean, but what if it were the case where no one was in the office, and you take away that element of politics or getting in front of your boss, and you're working in a true meritocracy, let's say, for example. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm just throwing out sort of the counterfactual here. So maybe it's a situation where in the future we don't have the ability to go, hey, let's go grab lunch, and then you curry favor with that manager that that you want to influence. But that's fundamental to human nature, and that's really sort of bread and butter for a lot of us. But I think that's a really excellent point, Elliot. How about you, Mohsen? What do you think?
I think it really depends on the company size and stage. So for us, we don't, to be honest, it's a wish that I have that kind of the 10, 15 first hires will be working from the office. I will try to do that. I still don't know if that's possible, but as long as people are happy to do that, that's my ideal scenario. But if you have a kind of later stage company, you have a product in the market, and you've got customers, and you've got salespeople, and kind of you're more developed, and or what kind of Elliot was saying, you're more of an enterprise with thousands of employees, and you have to just go into the office for some of the kind of soft parts of the business, soft skills parts of the business. Maybe again, that can be more flexible. But for us at this stage, we definitely want to work from the office and want to be in the same room and just get that brainstorming and get that kind of first culture kind of built here.
Okay,
I
great.
have an interesting one, if I'm allowed to jump in on this.
Yeah, of course, Amy.
We just have a company that's later stage, and their culture is unbelievable in the office, and they're hiring.
Unbelievable good or unbelievable bad?
Good, amazing. Yeah, really good, really good. And they're hiring a ton of people. They put out a survey of, who's happy staying at home, or would you prefer to be back in the office? And it feels like most people want to stay at home, but they also do an NPS score internally, and their NPS score is going down. So interesting that you can ask people things and get it. It's almost like people don't want things taken away, but it doesn't maybe make it better, right? So maybe it's like a 2-layer question that you have to ask, and not just assume the first layer is actually the correct one. But it was, yeah,
exactly. Like a lot of customer surveys are crap, and if you're building it around exactly what the customer wants. So we have a couple of questions from the audience here. So the first is this person wrote, one of my favorite quotes is, "The future is here, it's just unevenly distributed." Famous Gibson quote. "I believe that COVID has emphasized and made people more aware of these disparities. What sort of disparities do you think AI will introduce, and what positive and negative impacts on communities do you think we need to be considerate of?" That's a meaty question. Yeah, Rogayeh.
I actually got a similar question in different panel. One of the things that worries me, as much as I want to be glass half full, but this actually worries me, and that's the digital divide that we are seeing, and not just in within developed and developing countries, but also within developed countries as well. Access to technology and access to resources is definitely not evenly distributed. And we are going to see impacts, and that's why that's even that much more important for executives in charge of the companies. But when you even think about the societal impacts of it, students from low-income families that don't necessarily have access to technology and can have access to the same applications. I mean, I'm really worried what's going to happen in the world for the next couple of years. I bet a lot of economists are studying these these sort of like natural experiment events of just before and after. So that's one thing that actually worries me.
Well, I mean, every one of us in one way or another is, if we succeed, we're taking away jobs from humans, and that's just the nature of automation, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I mean,
to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. I totally agree with that. I mean, I see why you would say that, and how everything that we're working on is definitely creating more efficiencies. But there's also a lot of evidence that the kind of AI that's actually going to stay is the AI that really sits at the intersection of technology and human. Because at the end of the day, it's about decision making, and it's about things. So I think there are aspects that what you're saying is more accurate.
Yeah. So, and you're right in the sense that these can coexist, right? There are going to be certain jobs that are created for humans because of the use of automation and AI and machine learning. And then there are others that will be completely and utterly automated away. And these are disruptions. And I think that in general, in my opinion, they're good for the trajectory of the human race. But to this question, which is, what are these disparities, and are they widened, or are they, and this is a very meaty question. Sorry, one question, someone had asked for clarification, Amy, about your staying home driving down the Net Promoter Score.
Oh yeah, and I answered it in the chat, but I was just saying, they emailed the employees to ask them if they were happy being at home, and it was overwhelmingly yes, we want to be at home. But they do this NPS score that they can see month over month, and it's been decreasing for the last 6 months. So, everybody feels, I think, a better bond and a better culture with the company being at work, even though they're happy maybe as an individual being at home. So you just have a bit of a conflict, or maybe I have that wrong, I don't know, but there's something there that you have to tease apart to understand, like, why is that? You would think they would both be going up, but they're not. And they aren't mutually, the same. So I don't know. Yeah. It's just interesting.
Yeah, and there's a question from Richard, or a comment rather, that AI-driven businesses could create a lot of new jobs, and that's absolutely true. But I mean, it's not like everything is uniformly bad or everything's uniformly good. There's going to be in any kind of evolution of technology and business, there's going to be disruptions, and so there's good and bad. And we have to be aware that this is the sort of lens that we're going to be looked under, right? I mean, even in drug development, where we're talking about working with medicinal chemists, the first question I get is like, "Oh, so are you going to replace us?" I'm like, "No, God, no, not for like another 10 years or so." But you kind of make a little bit of a joke about it, but you're not really. But I think that's something that we all have to kind of grapple with, and we have to be honest with ourselves that automations and efficiencies in certain areas are only achieved when you eliminate the human from the loop, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Right? It's just there are different opportunities that come about because of that.
Yeah, and just quickly to add to that, I mean, there is a company called Voyage that drives kind of fully self-driving cars in retirement communities in Florida, and there is no driver behind the wheel, and the car is just driving itself. And the impact that they've had on that community in terms of mobility and in terms of getting people from A to B without needing anyone else and being independent is amazing. And so the future is here. As you said, it's not evenly distributed.
Yeah. We have one more question, which is what resources do the panelists find most useful in the local startup ecosystem, whether it's an accelerator, IRAP, or something else? Maybe Jessica, is there a specific resource that you find useful?
I think, in light of COVID, I definitely think the non-dilutive funding sources, the wage subsidies, have really helped technology companies keep staff and actually hire more. And so I think with tech, whether you're serving manufacturing, whether you're serving the service industry, I think the technology industry is probably the best ways that Canada can come out strong. And so I think those wage subsidies have been really critical to all tech companies right now.
Okay. Rogayeh?
We have been looking into a lot of resources from Export Canada, which is funny because, a lot of people think about Export Canada when it comes to actually in-person travel or things like that, but they actually have pivoted a lot of their services to really help market the products and services internationally, and there's funding available for it. And we do look into IRAP for innovation. We also do, we have our shred, and those are what we puts in as well.
Yeah, and the great thing about Can Export, that recent change, is you can repurpose a lot of that funding for digital promotion as well. So that's actually really helpful. So that's good. Okay, Mohsen, any what resource do you find to be useful?
To be honest, we haven't started really using any kind of. We're still too early, and we haven't used anything yet.
Okay, all right, Elliot.
I think IRAP has been pretty good in the past for us. I mean, non-dilutive funding, and also, the people behind the program are also quite knowledgeable entrepreneurs or operators themselves. So I think, they can give you more than just, funding and sort of open up doors and things like that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think we're all fans of IRAP, and we're all fans of Shred to varying degrees, depending on. But God, if we got spammed by 500 Shred sort of consultants after this, then I'll be anyway. That's just the price of.
One comment about that though, I think the government funding is great, but ultimately, and I'm very thankful for it. But at the end of the day, I think the business needs to be able to stand on its own feet, right? In some ways, private capital, although it's maybe dilutive, and maybe it's not as friendly as the government just giving you a check. At the end of the day, it's more of a litmus test. Is your company, can it stand on its own 2 feet? And I think if you look at the US, it's more ruthless in many ways, and you get massive number of unicorns, right? And they don't give out so many subsidies they do in Canada, right? So as much as I love getting the government money, I don't think it necessarily always it hasn't seemed to create as many unicorns as, for example, the US system, where it's more ruthless. They give you more money, but it requires people to not just kind of coast along, but you either have to go or be eaten alive, right? And I think that mentality in the US has made people basically create unicorns, right?
Yeah, no, definitely so. So we have a question for you, Elliot. Did you have any moral hazards that you wrestled with given Patriot One's use of your technology, particularly the LA Sheriff's Office?
I'm not really too familiar with that use case, I'm afraid, so I can't really comment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was hoping for a little controversy here. So, Taryn, I'm not.
I don't really know too much about that, so I can't really give you any controversy.
Well, say something really controversial so that we can actually end on a bang here. No. Okay. Well, if there are no more questions from the audience, maybe I'll invite you, each panelist, to kind of wrap up. Just say a few words, and I think we'll be able to wrap up at 5:30 on time. Elliot, you want to go ahead? You've got the floor, so to speak.
I just like to thank VEF for organizing this thing. I think it's great to bring a bunch of entrepreneurs together, and I think especially I think there's a question here about mitigating mental health issues. I think that I think a lot of us on this panel are probably and in the room today are probably quite fortunate because of the industry we've chosen and the fact that jobs haven't been decimated with COVID, but a lot of people are struggling. I think events like this are great to bring people together and just see people's faces, right? I'm seeing people's names and faces I haven't seen for quite a long time. And I think, I'm just really thankful that, you guys are organizing this and bringing everyone together and sort of creating that community in Vancouver, because there's no reason we can't become a Silicon Valley if we kind of all work together and, get behind the ecosystem here in town.
Okay. Thank you. Very quick, Mohsen.
Yeah, same here. And I think the energy that I got from the meeting, from this meeting today, and I think on the participant side, the flexibility of just jumping in and jumping out, that is something that hopefully we can keep going and with these virtual events. And I really look forward to being part of the whole ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Rogayeh?
I really like what Elliot said, so I'm going to be a little bit of a copycat here. I think the comment about the Canadian ecosystem and the responsibility that is really on us to be critical on ourselves and really think what we can do in order to build sustainable and growing businesses, especially given the constraints and difficulties that exist right now. I think we really do have the opportunity and the ecosystem exists for it. We should just come together and even that much stronger. And if we do that, we're going to see some great success even in the region.
Thank you very much. And Jessica?
Yeah, I think I got to say thanks to VEF for putting this on and also making it financially accessible to pretty much everybody. It's really critical, coming to the end of 2020 here after so many months of social distancing and, more isolation, that we have these events. And it's networking events like this that is how I started my company. So I really hope that we can keep this going. There's a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of opportunity out there. And there's a lot of great technology companies making amazing things here. And so hopefully we can continue to see our ecosystem grow.
Thank you very much to all our panelists. And I'll sign off now, but one last plug, Project Athena Pathways. If you are interested in working with some amazing women in machine learning, data science, and AI, I've just posted the URL, but open for mentorship, internships, co-op programs. It's a great program and we've used it extensively. So that's it. Back to you, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. All right, go through this. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move into the breakout rooms. We're ending a little late, but it was a great conversation, so I think it was worth sticking with it. So thank you to all of our panelists for joining us tonight. So for those of you who want to stick around for networking, we're going to put you back into networking rooms. There's also a survey that just went out by email. If you guys could take the time to answer that survey, it really helps us, know what events you like or don't like, or things that you like or don't like. And, we're really here for you. So anything you can do to give us feedback on the events, that's great. And otherwise, I think I just have one more slide for you. Our next event, January 19th, we have something very special cooking up for you. So stick around over the next few weeks. We'll send you an email on what that event is going to be. Block it off. I think it's going to be a very exciting event and you guys will want to see it. So save that date. And otherwise, we're gonna head over to our breakout rooms.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.